always thought family would look out for one another, especially in tough times. But there I was, packing my bags for a quick trip out of town when I heard my brother Jake talking on the phone in the next room. His voice was low and conspiratorial, like he was sharing a secret, and my curiosity got the better of me. I moved closer to the open door, trying not to make a sound, and listened. "So, I've taken care of the medical power of attorney," Jake was saying, sounding far too smug for my liking. "Yes, it's all set." My heart sank. I could feel it like a physical weight. Our dad had always made it clear that I was the one he trusted with his medical decisions. It was something we had discussed many times, especially after his health started declining. But now, here was Jake handling things that weren't his to handle. We had always been a close family, or at least I thought so. Dad needed all the reassurance and support he could get, and I had made a commitment to be there for him in every way possible. It was unsettling to think that Jake might be undermining that trust behind my back. But what was worse was the realization that he might have already made a move without anyone knowing. I took a deep breath and finished zipping up my suitcase, trying to steady my thoughts. There had been no mention of this from Dad, and it was possible Jake was bluffing. But knowing Jake, that seemed unlikely. He always liked to be 2 steps ahead, especially when there was something to gain. As I left the room, I couldn't help but replay his words in my mind. Had he really taken over the power of attorney, or was he just trying to rattle me? Either way, I knew I couldn't ignore it. I felt a responsibility to Dad, not just because of the legalities, but because of the promise I had made to him. A promise to ensure his wishes would be honored no matter what. I decided I wouldn't confront Jake directly, at least not yet. Knowing him, he would just deny it or twist the story to make me look like I was overreacting. I needed to gather more information before making any accusations. One way or another, I had to find out if what I overheard was true, and more importantly, what I could do about it if it was. For now, I buried the hurt and focused on the task ahead. If Jake had indeed made a move without consulting me or Dad, then I had to be ready to challenge him. This wasn't just about power, it was about the very essence of family and trust. I finished my preparations and left for the airport, my mind already planning my return. Whatever happened next, I knew I needed to act with quiet resolve. Family betrayal was one thing, but allowing it to win was another entirely. I arrived back home earlier than expected, the trip cut short by an unavoidable change in plans. Stepping off the plane, I headed straight to the hospital, the nagging question about Jake's involvement gnawing at my thoughts. I needed answers, and waiting any longer felt like a betrayal of my own resolve. The hospital corridors felt both familiar and cold. I caught sight of the hospital administrator, Miss Turner, near the nurses' station. She was a woman of her word, efficient in her dealings, and she knew our family well. After exchanging pleasantries, I shifted the conversation to my father's care. I gathered my courage and asked if there had been any updates to the legal documents concerning my dad's status. Miss Turner skimmed through her notes quickly, her fingers darting over the keyboard. The moment she paused, my heart jumped to my throat. Yes, she confirmed, Jake had indeed filed new documents, naming himself as the new power of attorney. The words felt heavy, like stones dropping into a pond, rippling through my mind and heart. I tried to maintain my composure, but inside, every part of me screamed at the betrayal. I asked when this had happened, and Miss Turner explained it was during the week I was preparing for my trip. The timeline matched perfectly with the overheard conversation. Jake hadn't been bluffing, he had moved swiftly and quietly. Taking a deep breath to steady myself, I thanked Miss Turner, not allowing any tremor in my voice. There was no point in revealing my turmoil just yet. I needed to approach this with a clear head and firm resolve. Leaving the hospital, the betrayal felt like a fresh wound. Jake had not only gone against our father's wishes, but had done so behind my back. It was as if he had handed me a bitter pill and expected me to swallow it quietly. But I wasn't going to confront him just yet. Confrontation without preparation would only lead to more manipulation. Jake was skilled at twisting narratives to appear the hero in our family saga. No, I needed to be strategic about this. I needed help to set things right. As I walked back to my car, I decided on my next step, consulting my lawyer to understand the options available to me. If there was any possibility of reversing what Jake had done, I had to find it. The drive home was quiet, the weight of the day settling on me like a heavy cloak. I knew this was far from over. Jake's actions had only solidified my determination. This wasn't just a legal battle, it was personal, and I intended to see it through no matter what lengths were required. At home, I sat alone with my thoughts, the betrayal replaying in my mind over and over, yet underneath the hurt, a resolve began to form. I knew I couldn't let Jake's deceit go unanswered. Time pressed on, and I prepared to make the calls that would start the process of reclaiming what was rightfully mine, not just out of duty, but out of love for my father. I would ensure his wishes were honored, no matter the personal cost. As I picked up the phone to contact my lawyer, I was filled with a quiet determination, ready to face whatever came next. I dialed my lawyer's number, fingers trembling slightly as I pressed each button. Marilyn, who had handled my legal affairs for years, answered with her usual calm demeanor. I felt a wave of relief just hearing her voice, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this. I explained everything: the overheard conversation, the hospital's disclosure about the new power of attorney, and my fears about Jake's intentions. Marilyn listened in silence. When I finished, she asked a few questions, each one cutting to the heart of the matter. She reassured me that power of attorney changes could be contested, especially if there was evidence suggesting manipulation or coercion. Her voice was a lifeline, a tether back to some semblance of control. We discussed my father's previously expressed wishes, and Marilyn agreed that they would be key in challenging Jake's unauthorized move. She suggested gathering any documents or communications that could back up my claims: emails, handwritten notes, anything that clearly showed my father's intentions. There was a legal path forward, but it would require patient and strategic gathering of evidence. That night, I went through my father's papers with a determination, looking for anything that underscored his trust in me. I remembered a card he'd given me on my last birthday, expressing his gratitude for my support. It wasn't a formal document, but was still a heartfelt testament. I placed it aside, along with a few emails I'd printed out over the years, where he had explicitly outlined his wishes for his care. As I organized these pieces, a clarity emerged from the chaos. I was no longer fumbling in the dark. I had a direction, and with Marilyn's guidance, I knew I could build a solid case. My resolve hardened with each piece of evidence I uncovered. I thought of Jake, so assured of his maneuvering, and felt a quiet sense of empowerment. His actions had always been about control, about appearing as the responsible son when, in reality, his motives were self-serving. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Marilyn and I went through every detail, ensuring we had a comprehensive view of the situation. We drafted a formal request to the hospital, seeking a review of the power of attorney documents. We needed them to see the truth beneath Jake's surface-level charm and manipulation. I spent time at the hospital too, speaking with staff who had interacted with my father. Many remembered his straightforward nature, his vivid descriptions of how he wanted his future handled. I thanked them for their observations, adding their informal testimonies to the arsenal Marilyn was assembling. Each day that passed, I felt myself growing stronger, more assured in my purpose. Jake's betrayal no longer loomed as a shadow over me, but served instead as a testament to the importance of my actions. I would not let my father's intentions be twisted or ignored. Soon, Marilyn indicated it was time to request a meeting with the hospital's ethics board. This was a crucial step, a chance to present our case, to lay bare the reality of the situation. As we prepared, I felt a mixture of nerves and anticipation. My father's voice echoed in my memory, his trust in me an ever-present guide. In the quiet moments before I slept, I found myself embracing the magnitude of this journey. It wasn't just about the legal battle, it was about preserving the dignity and respect my father deserved. The stakes were higher than any seal on a document, rooted in the love that had defined our relationship for years. I knew confronting Jake directly would be inevitable, but not yet. First, I had to ensure that the ground was stable beneath me, that every step forward was anchored in truth. Until then, I would keep my distance, watching and waiting for the right moment to confront him with the indisputable evidence of his betrayal. We finally secured a spot on the hospital's ethics board agenda. Marilyn and I arrived early that morning, armed with our meticulously prepared documents and the backing of staff testimonies. The board members trickled in, exchanging courteous nods. I felt a mix of anxiety and determination settling in my chest. This was our chance to expose the injustice of Jake's actions and restore the rightful trust placed in me. As the meeting began, Marilyn spoke with clarity, outlining the discrepancies between Jake's sudden claims and the abundance of evidence supporting my father's true intentions. She presented copies of emails, the cherished birthday card, and, notably, an affidavit from the healthcare staff who remembered my father's explicit wishes. The room was filled with a heavy silence as the weight of our evidence took hold. One of the board members, a tall woman with sharp eyes, leaned forward, her gaze piercing. "And where is your brother now?" Her tone was as if she had seen too many cases like this before. I cleared my throat, keeping my voice neutral. "Jake is aware of the proceedings but chose not to attend today." I paused, letting the words linger without betraying the simmering indignation beneath my calm facade. The board reviewed each piece of evidence with consideration. Their expressions ranged from skepticism to sympathy. The truth was plain. My father's previously expressed wishes were not merely an old man's passing thoughts, but a well-documented, consistent desire for me to oversee his care. At one point, Marilyn introduced video footage from a family gathering, capturing my father's voice expressing his trust in me. Tears blurred my vision as I watched his animated face light up the screen. I blinked them away, focusing on the task at hand. I couldn't allow emotion to cloud my resolve. Finally, the board concluded their review. The chair, a seasoned gentleman with a gentle demeanor, steepled his fingers. "We recognize the compelling nature of the evidence presented," he said, his voice. He shot a glance around the table before continuing. "Next, we will hear from opposing counsel." In a harsh twist, Jake had indeed sent his attorney. The air shifted as she stood up, her expression as she began to speak. "My client took actions necessary for his father's best interest," she stated, her voice and calculated. Her attempt to paint Jake as the dutiful son contrasted sharply with the facts we laid bare. Marilyn listened, letting the attorney spin her narrative before stepping in with a precision that left no room for deception. She dismantled the opposing counsel's claims point by point, highlighting the gaps and inconsistencies. The room seemed to pivot back to reality, seeing through the thin veil of Jake's justification. As the meeting drew to a close, I felt the tension in my muscles slowly unwinding. We had done what we set out to do: present the truth and stand firm against the fraudulence that sought to undermine it. Afterwards, as Marilyn and I made our way out of the boardroom, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. There was still a long way to go, but this was a crucial first step. The system had listened, and soon enough, it would act. With the evidence now firmly in play, the hospital's next move was inevitable. As we walked through the hallways, I noticed a few familiar faces nodding in support, staff who knew my father well. Their silent encouragement fueled my resolve. I knew that back home, the confrontation with Jake awaited, but here and now, I took a moment to appreciate that we had managed to turn the tide. I couldn't deny the weight of anticipation that settled in my gut. Jake's actions had not only been a betrayal of trust, but also a deep cut into the fabric of our family. Yet, here I was, holding onto my father's voice in my heart, guided by his enduring faith in me. There was no turning back. You could never unsee the truth once it was laid bare. And so, with the formalities behind us, I prepared myself for the next phase of this struggle. Jake's time to face the undeniable evidence would come, and I would be ready to meet it head on. This was far from over, but for the first time in weeks, I felt the ground firm beneath my feet. Seated in that stuffy room with the ethics board members watching us intently, the air felt heavier than the moment warranted, like a silent judge assessing every twitch and shift in the room. Jake, who had managed to saunter in minutes before things began, took the seat opposite me. His face was a mask of bravado, but I knew him too well. Beneath the surface lurked an uncertainty he couldn't quite hide. The chairman cleared his throat, signaling the start of proceedings. I kept my focus steady, barely glancing at Jake as he launched into his defense. "I was only thinking of Dad's best interests," he said, leaning back with an air of casual confidence that grated on my nerves. He's always been anxious about these things, and I thought it was best to take charge, given the circumstances. Jake's attorney, a man whose presence matched the self-assured arrogance of his client, nodded in agreement. "Indeed, it's all about ensuring Mr. Thompson's wishes are met, and Jake has always been deeply involved in matters concerning his father," he added, his tone as if he were explaining something self-evident to a child. But the faces of the board members showed no sign of being swayed by these hollow reassurances. Marilyn, seated beside me, waited for the right moment, her calm presence a steady reminder of the ground we'd covered. When the chairman nodded in our direction, she leaned forward, addressing the room with an articulation of facts that cut through the air like a knife. "While it's commendable that family members want to be involved," Marilyn began, her tone yet inviting, "we must adhere to the legal representations and expressed wishes of the patient in question. The document we provided clearly shows that Mr. Thompson named my client as his power of attorney, a decision made in full cognitive awareness just last year." Jake shifted slightly, his bravado losing its edge. I saw him exchange a quick glance with his attorney, who adjusted the stack of papers before them as if searching for a lifeline. "Do you have any documentation," the chairman asked, "that supports your claim of acting in your father's best interests or his direct request for you to assume this role?" I watched as Jake fumbled through his papers, a sheen of perspiration gathering at his brow. His attorney leaned in, whispering something I couldn't quite catch, which seemed to unsettle Jake further. Without the anticipated evidence to lean on, Jake was bare before the scrutiny of the board. He offered a response. Well, I don't have it here. But my father and I have spoken about this several times. We have an understanding. Marilyn didn't miss a beat, her expression as she countered. Understandings are one thing, Mr. Thompson, but legally recorded directives are another. Until any such evidence is presented, we must return to the documents and statements on record that hold the rightful authority. A murmur swept through the board members, some nodding in agreement. I felt of relief trying to escape me, but I kept my composure, knowing that each step counted. The chairman's voice remained, "We understand the concern for Mr. Thompson's well-being, but it is our duty to follow legal protocols and respect the documented wishes of the patient. Without further evidence from your end, we have limited choices in our determinations." Jake's confidence visibly faltered now, his formerly smooth exterior cracking under the weight of logic and undeniable evidence. Despite our complicated past, watching him struggle with the truth gave me no pleasure. There was only a understanding that this was part of the necessary path to justice. Realizing that the meeting neared its conclusion, I sensed a shifting tide. Jake's attempts to circumvent our father's expressed wishes had crumbled under the weight of scrutiny, leaving him defenseless against the board's inevitable decision. When the chairman called for the final comments, Jake looked across the table, his gaze finally with the understanding of his predicament. He knew that he had no more cards to play, no more falsehoods to spin. With the meeting adjourned, the board members filed out, leaving us in an echoing silence. Jake and his attorney remained seated, absorbed in quiet conversation, while Marilyn and I gathered our materials. There was no need for further confrontation. The board's decision would speak louder than any words could. As we left the room, I glanced back at Jake, not with triumph, but with the sad acknowledgement of our fractured relationship. He had played his hand, and now he would have to face the repercussions. Marilyn patted my arm as we exited. "You did well in there. You let the truth speak for itself." Her words were a balm, reminding me that while the road ahead might still wind, there was now a clear direction, one that honored my father's dignity and wishes. I deeply as we stepped back into the world beyond the boardroom, the crisp air a welcome change from the tension inside. I knew the next phase was upon us, and with every step I embraced the resolve within me. This battle for rightful justice was not just a matter of family, it was a testament to honoring the trust my father had placed in me. Marilyn and I lingered outside the boardroom, exchanging few words as we waited for what felt like an eternity. They had said they would return shortly with a decision, yet the anticipation made every minute stretch into forever. I caught sight of Jake through the glass, his fingers drumming nervously on the table, his lawyer whispering in his ear. I felt an odd mixture of dismay and triumph seeing him there. The betrayal was his, yet the consequences felt as if they were mine alone to bear. Finally, the door swung open, and the chairman returned with a calm authority that silenced the lingering whispers. He carried a simple folder that seemed to contain the fate of our family within its slim confines. The room reorganized itself, people reclaiming their seats, and the air filled with the rustle of papers and settling of anticipation. Jake's gaze met mine briefly, a mixture of defiance and submission in his eyes. I offered nothing in return but an expressionless face, not wanting to reveal the turmoil inside. The chairman took his place at the head of the table, clearing his throat. After thorough consideration of all evidence presented, he began. "We have reached a decision regarding the power of attorney for Mr. Thompson." He paused, letting the weight of his words hang in the air. I could feel Marilyn's quiet support beside me, but the weight of the moment was mine alone to carry. "The documents filed by Mr. Jake Thompson," he continued, "were found to have been improperly processed and executed, without adherence to the required protocols." There it was, the quiet undoing of Jake's deceit unraveling with each syllable. I kept my gaze steady and unfaltering, ready to meet whatever came next. "The hospital's legal team has unanimously decided to void those documents," the chairman declared, "and reinstate the original power of attorney in favor of Miss Thompson, as was clearly intended by Mr. Thompson prior to any recent alterations." With those words, the burden I had carried for days seemed to lift slightly. Justice was not a loud proclamation, but a quiet correction, putting right what should never have been wronged. I nodded, acknowledging their decision with gratitude that words couldn't quite capture. Jake's reaction was different. His shoulders slumped, and for a moment, he looked younger, like the brother I remembered before ambition had clouded his judgment. The room began to stir as people absorbed the decision, tidying away their papers and preparing to leave. Jake's lawyer leaned in towards him, speaking in hushed tones, but Jake simply sat there, perhaps contemplating the weight of what had just transpired. I knew this wasn't the end of our journey, but a step toward reconciling what had been fractured. Yet it was a necessary one, protecting not just my father's wishes, but his dignity. As the meeting concluded, the chairman approached me, extending a hand. His grip was firm, reassuring. "You handled this with grace," he remarked, "and in doing so, honored your father's intentions. Not everyone would have taken the high road." I nodded, appreciating his words even as I felt the weight of them. Taking the high road hadn't been easy, but it had been right. As Marilyn and I gathered our things to leave, Jake remained behind, still immersed in his own aftermath. I knew there would be no celebration in this victory, only the quiet satisfaction of knowing that my father's trust had been safeguarded. Outside the hospital, the day was bright, the sun casting sharp shadows across the pavement. Despite everything, I found myself pausing to appreciate the light and the fresh air. It felt like a new beginning, tentative yet determined. With the decision made, the next steps were clear and actionable. I had a renewed sense of purpose, a path forward that felt firmly grounded. Marilyn walked beside me, her presence a comforting reminder of the support that had carried me through this ordeal. "We've set things straight," she said, her voice a balm. "Now it's about maintaining that order." I nodded, understanding her perfectly. The board's decision was a victory, yes, but there was still work to be done to protect what had been reclaimed. With every step away from the hospital, I felt a little lighter, ready to face whatever came next, with the quiet strength that had sustained me thus far. The path ahead was clearer now, my father's wishes restored and respected. It was a promise I intended to keep, no matter the challenges that might arise. This was more than just a family matter. It was a testament to preserving integrity, a lesson I vowed never to forget. Back at the hospital, I made my way to the administrative wing, feeling a renewed sense of resolve. The process of reclaiming what rightfully belonged to me and, more importantly, to my father hadn't been straightforward. But now, with the power of attorney restored in my name, it was crucial to ensure that every aspect of my father's care aligned with his wishes. I headed straight to Miss Turner's office. She greeted me with a polite smile, the kind that conveyed efficiency and an understanding of the gravity of the situation. I explained my intentions, determined to leave no room for misinterpretation. My father's directives needed to be clear, the documents updated, and everyone involved must be aware of the changes. Miss Turner nodded, her fingers already poised over the keyboard, ready to amend the records. I watched as she worked, feeling a quiet weight lift from my shoulders with each click of her keys. Her efficiency was one more step toward ensuring my father received the care he wished for. Down the hall, I could see the nurses bustling about, their movements purposeful. I had always held a deep respect for the work they did, their commitment to patients often going above and beyond the call of duty. I approached the nurses' station, aware that some of them might not yet be aware of the changes. With a steady, deliberate tone, I shared the updated directives. I wanted them to understand not just the letter of the law, but the spirit of it too. My father's care was a responsibility I took as seriously as they took theirs. Conversations with the medical staff, Dr. Chen in particular, were brief but reassuring. His expression showed understanding, a familiarity with my father's case that made him a valuable ally. He had been there through the ups and downs of my father's health journey, and now he nodded as I explained the updated care directives. His agreement was but firm, a testament to the professional integrity I had come to rely on. Outside the room where my father lay, I paused. The reality of the situation settled over me like a gentle but persistent rain. Despite the administrative battles, this was where the heart of the matter lay, my father, resting, unaware of the turmoil that had surrounded him in recent weeks. I stepped inside, the familiar scent of antiseptic blending with the sounds of the monitors. I took his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin, knowing that what I had done was for him, for his peace. The changes were now formalized, the hospital staff briefed, and everything was in place. I knew I had done everything I could to honor my father's wishes, and that realization brought me a deep sense of relief. There would always be challenges, I knew that. Family dynamics were seldom simple, and Jake's betrayal was a wound that would take time to heal. But for now, I focused on what truly mattered. My father's well-being, his dignity, his voice preserved through the documents we had painstakingly reinstated. As I left the hospital, the air felt different. Each step away from the building was a step toward a new equilibrium. My role as the custodian of my father's wishes had been tested and had emerged intact. It was a quiet victory, one not marked by celebration but by the calm assurance that comes from doing what's right no matter how difficult. I sat at the kitchen table, the legal documents spread out in front of me, each page a safeguard of my father's true wishes. Marilyn, my lawyer, had been meticulous in her preparation, leaving no stone unturned. It was comforting to know that those papers were now both a shield and a testament to my perseverance. With a tone, Marilyn explained the implications of the cease and desist letter that was making its way to Jake. He would receive it that afternoon, its language clear and unambiguous. His power to make medical decisions for our father had been formally revoked, leaving him with no room to maneuver or contest. I thought about Jake as I stepped outside into the crisp autumn air. His betrayal had cut deep, yet I couldn't help but wonder what had driven him to such lengths. The desire for control, perhaps, or a misguided sense of duty. Regardless of his motives, the outcome was now firmly established. Justice, quiet and resolute, had been served. Back inside, the phone rang, its trill echoing through the room. It was Miss Turner from the hospital, confirming that the cease and desist had been formally filed. Her voice was laced with professional empathy as she reassured me that my father's care remained unchanged. My role as his advocate was recognized and respected. Jake received the letter while I was on my way to the hospital. I imagined his reaction the moment he read the official demand to cease all decision-making activities regarding our father's treatment. Marilyn's words echoed in my mind. This is the outcome we needed, definitive and enforceable. Arriving at the hospital, I walked down the familiar halls to my father's room. The monitors beeped softly, a steady rhythm that had become part of my life's soundtrack. I took a moment to steady myself before entering, the door a threshold between the turmoil of recent weeks and the calm clarity of now. Dad was sleeping peacefully, his face relaxed, free from the weight of decisions he couldn't make himself. I sat beside him, feeling the warmth of his presence, grateful that he was shielded from the chaos that had briefly threatened his care. The knowledge that I had protected his dignity filled me with a quiet strength. I reflected on the events that led to this moment, how each step had been both a challenge and a test of resolve. The victory was not just in legal terms, but in the assurance that my father's voice had been preserved. In this room, amidst the gentle hum of hospital life, I felt a profound sense of relief. As I prepared to leave, there was a message from Jake. It was short, a sparse acknowledgement of the letter's receipt. There was no apology, not yet, but the tone was markedly different. Gone was the defiance, replaced by a recognition of the boundary he could no longer cross. Walking out, the world felt different, lighter somehow. Each step carried me away from the conflict and closer to the promise of a new balance. The family dynamics might remain complex, but this chapter was closed, the resolution anchored in both law and love for my father. Life would continue, its path guided by decisions made not in haste or selfishness, but with clarity and care. While the road ahead held uncertainties, I knew I had the tools and the tenacity to navigate them. For now, though, there was peace, and in that simple truth lay the most significant victory of all.